All right, everybody, we're going to get started in just a minute here, so hang tight. We'll be right with you. On the screen.
Scuba diving.
Oh, yeah. Telling you, it's the good stuff.
That's the good stuff. I love it.
All right, we'll give it about another minute here and let everybody trickle in. As a reminder, folks, if you haven't signed in yet, do make sure I'm going to pop some links here into the chat that you sign in to Boss or Quote and Apply, and you can follow along with us during the meeting. And this meeting is going to be recorded, but it will only be sent to those who register. All righty. Well, we're right on time here, Nick. If you're ready, I'm ready.
Ready to roll.
All right. Well, welcome everybody. Thanks for coming today. If you're new here, I definitely want to extend a big welcome and thank you for joining. My name again is Adam Levine, and you'll see that I'm Coach Adam here. I'm going to be your brokerage director at Back Nine. And I just dropped some links in the chat. So if you haven't signed in to Boss or Quote and Apply yet, please use those links to hop on in and you can follow along with us. And so today is pretty special. We're going to do something called Commercial Life Insurance Fundamentals. And I have with me a good friend and partner, Mr. Nick Majors with Lincoln. So thank you for joining us. I'm going to do a quick little demonstration of Quote and Apply here for you guys to show you how easy it is to quote and submit business. And then I'm going to turn it over to Nick, and he's going to leave us with some very good education. And make sure to hang out through the whole thing here because we got some merch for you at the end. But you got to pay attention. We're going to ask some questions. All right, so I'm going to stop sharing for just a sec so I can close that screen. And let's dive right in. Okay, so Quote and Apply here is really the most versatile quoting tool that you're going to find out there. And I can say that after 23 years in the business. It is as simple as sharing a link and someone can come to your site and purchase right online without even talking to you. We have roughly about 30 carriers loaded up and all kinds of products. We're going to get into that in a little bit here, but allow me to just demonstrate. So when you have your own Quote and Apply link, which is free, by the way, once you log into Boss, you could simply just send this to a client. They could do it by themselves. You can do it as the agent, however you please. You'll see we just collect a little bit of information here. And today I chose somebody using non-tobacco, I guess true, depends on which carrier, which we're going to see here in a second. You'll see height and weight. You'll add date of birth, and you'll be taken here to your digital insurance market. Now, from here, your clients can purchase term, permanent, final expense, long-term care, annuities, and even IULs right off your website. So we just need to click a box here to decide which product. Okay, you could scroll this back and forth to use for the death benefit or even type it in. Let's look at some 20-year term. And so this is going to pull in rates from numerous carriers. Now, remember, in this case, we selected somebody that is currently using chew, not cigarettes. So normally that's tobacco at most carriers, but we'll see our friends here at Lincoln and Prudential, as well as John Hancock, definitely have an exception for that. So if you do come across that client, think of Lincoln, think of Prudential and John Hancock here, as your client will qualify for something way better. From here, you can see that we could even take off carriers if we don't want them for some reason. You have access to policy details like a consumer guide, an advisor guide, an underwriting guide, but it's just as simple as clicking continue. You'll then be taken to the application. And again, this is something the client can be doing, or you could be helping him with. We'll send John a link. John will go ahead and complete this journey by himself, or we can help him through it as the agent. Now, I wanted to point out something in here real quick as well, because we'll be talking about this in a minute. As we are discussing ownership of the policy, when you're doing an application and quote and apply, and you're doing one of these commercial life insurance policies, you have the ability to select, say, John's not going to own this, but his business is, or his employer is in the case of Keyman Insurance. Same thing for the beneficiary. We have the availability to switch that over to a business as well. Now we're going to need to collect a little bit of info, which is something Nick is going to help us with to know what we're looking for. But it is that simple. And then you just submit this policy right online, and we'll get right to it and process that for you and get it approved as fast as possible. So again, quote and apply, and Boss here, totally free. Boss, I don't really have time to go through today, but we will at another time. Think of it as your CRM and case management tool. And without further ado, I'd like to introduce everybody here to my friend Nick. Nick, how's it going today? Oh, you're on mute, sir.
Technology, man. It's
I know,
hard for me,
right?
but I'm doing good. I appreciate you having me on.
My pleasure. My pleasure. And guys, make sure to hang in through the whole webinar here. At the end, we're going to be giving away some merchandise, some nice polo shirts via Lincoln. Thank you for sponsoring that. So we're going to be asking a few questions. So you stand ready to answer those.
Sure. And if anybody has questions, feel free to throw them in the chat. We can kind of answer those when we get to the end, and I'll make sure to go back and address them. And if there are ones that take a little bit longer, more than happy to do a separate call to dive into a specific case that you've got. So, as Adam kind of mentioned, I am the contact for you guys over here at Lincoln Financial, and today I want to run through one of Lincoln's focuses, which is in the business owner marketplace. It's a primary spot that we've really dipped our toes and planted our feet from just our overall focus. And so what I want to run through today is a couple of different opportunities that you'll have with your business owner clients, how to have those conversations, what to look for, and then really some things to think of when it comes to those answers to those questions, like, oh, I should focus on this, or oh, focus on this, or focus on that with each client as they come about. So I'll go ahead and share my screen real quick, and we'll kind of get through this thing real fast. Any comments from your side, Adam, before we get rolling?
No. Again, just thank you for joining us today. And I think what most agents really need to take from this is that, one, it's available. Two, there are a bunch of tools to help you out. And three, there's support via myself or with Nick here. So don't feel like you have to go at this alone.
Yeah, perfect. So without further ado, let's kind of just take a quick glance at really why are we even focusing on the business owner marketplace? Why is it something you should spend your time on? And why is it something that Lincoln's focused on? And the reason is there's opportunity in that space, right? You look inside of the United States, and about 99% of businesses in the US are small businesses. They employ about 45% of our US employee base. And of that, that means you've got a plethora of opportunity for many different aspects when it comes to key person, when it comes to executive benefits, when it comes to a buy sell. You've got a lot of clientele that you probably work with in your day in, day out life, and their business owners and their needs are probably not being met. So the reason we focus here is because, frankly, it's a big pond to fish in, and we want to find those opportunities and focus on those opportunities. And there's really three main points of concern when it comes to business owners, right? Those are kind of highlighted here at the top, so in the maroon space. So number one is just finding out how to efficiently transfer their business when either they're going to retire, right, or maybe they're going to switch industries. How do they effectively and efficiently exit their business and get fully compensated for that? The other aspect we're going to dive into is for someone that owns a business and has an extremely important employee, whether that be maybe a top salesperson or someone that really handles their entirety of operations and makes their life much easier. how do they make sure that they're protected from the potential loss of that person, whether that be the true loss of them from a loss of life or loss of them from leaving the business? It's a big piece of how do you make sure that you are protecting your business, not just now, but in 2 years and 5 years and 10 years when something may happen to them. And that kind of almost goes in line with, I would say, the third thing that most often business owners are nervous about, which is, you know, keep people, we want to keep them just in case something were to happen, but how do you make sure that we retain those folks, keep them rewarded, keep them focused, that way they're not constantly hopping and switching? Because the worst thing that can happen as a business owner is turnover. It takes a lot of time, effort, and money to train some of your employees and keep them on as a business. And for you to invest all that time, money, and effort only for them to leave in a couple of years is not a profitable idea. So how can we utilize some insurance aspects to retain and recruit these advisors, or not these advisors, these employees? Well, we're going to dive into that a little bit. And these are kind of some of the questions I will answer, and the solutions for these, or I should say the insurance words for these, are kind of at the bottom. We've got buy, sell funded with life insurance would be the exit planning process. Key person insurance is going to be how do we keep protect our business from those key people leaving. And then we've got three different styles that we're going to focus on today, all depending on the structure of the business for retaining and rewarding those top talents, which is executive bonus, loan regime split dollar, and a SERP agreement. So for someone that's not really focused in this space, and maybe you have connections in this world, it is tough, right? To go, where do I start? And I think this is probably a much simpler slide to really focus on when it comes to, what we're looking at. The exit and retirement strategy is really just who we're focusing on, right? That's the business owner. Key person is the key employee. Executive benefits is also a key employee that we want to keep around. So the who for most of these is going to center around either the employee or the owner, just depending on the structure. So what we're going to focus on first is buy-sell agreements funded via life insurance, and the who of that conversation is going to be our business owners. And it all comes down to, I would say, really one big piece for our business owners. If you have a client that is someone that has their own business or multiple businesses, the thing that you can often hang from a carrot question for them to figure out if they do or don't have a plan in place is this little blue bubble on the right. If you become disabled, retired, or pass away, who's going to take over for your business? And if they don't have a set, I would say, agreement, plan, or structure in place for this question, they don't have a buy-sell agreement in place, they don't have an exit strategy or succession planning strategy in place, and that's your in to start looking for the signs of what is their business, when do they plan to retire, who do they think their successor is, how to have the conversation so that way you can find the opportunity to help provide this strategy for them. Because the thing about business owners is they're really great at working on their business. They're not that great on planning for their business. And I think I skipped the slide here. So
I kind of felt that one too, Nick. Thank you.
Yeah, it went too quick. So with a buy-sell agreement, what it really is, it's a contract between the owner, I should say co-owners of a business, that dictates essentially how are they going to exit the business. So how are the ownership interests going to be divvied up if something were to happen like death, disability, retirement, etc. So there's always a triggering event that causes this. And the reason that we have these, right, is it's going to help protect that continuation of the business. It's going to protect the financial security of other business owners. So if you're one of four business owners and one of them leaves, how are the other three going to be compensated, and how are they going to adjust their shares in that business for him leaving, and also how are they going to fund his payout when he leaves? So this just gives us a plan in place, a buy-sell agreement to have that exit strategy conversation. And when it comes to the exit strategy, it's super important for businesses to have their business evaluated. And the reason you want to have their business evaluated and you want to have it done properly is it can have an impact on many different aspects of their life, from, I'll say, the taxation piece, your continuation piece, from creditor relationships. So, estate planning, potentially you can have estate tax issues depending on the valuation of the business, because that's included in your estate. And you want to make sure that you understand full and well what that business is valued at when you're entering into a buy-sell agreement. Same thing when it comes to gift taxes. If you're gifting any portion of that business interest to someone else, the valuation of that needs to be known so it can be properly reported, or you could run into taxation issues. And same thing when it goes to business continuation. You want to make sure that you're buying and selling at a full and fair price for the market. And if you don't have your business truly valued, you can either undersell or you can oversell. It just depends. So it's one thing you want to make sure. It's kind of like the same way if you're going to go buy and sell your home. You want to make sure you're buying at a fair market price. So what we're going to look at here is two pieces. We've got a cross purchase agreement, which if you have multiple owners in a business, they're going to buy life insurance on each other, and that will be their ability to exit the business. Or we have what's called an entity purchase agreement. They're going to buy insurance, and the business is going to be the sole beneficiary of that insurance. As a result, that will then buy out that owner when they depart. So first things first, we're going to look at a cross purchase. Now, a cross purchase, when you're thinking about talking to your business owners who are looking for an exit strategy, this strategy often gets difficult when you start getting above 3+, 4+ owners in one singular business. I'll give you an example. Right now, in the example that we're looking at, we just have two owners. We have owner A and owner B. Owner B is leaving the business. Owner A is going to stay in the business. As you see in bullet point number 2, with the insurance policies, owner A is going to buy on owner B. Owner B is going to buy on owner A. And what happens is when they leave, right, the life insurance policy from owner B is going to, or excuse me, from owner A owned on B is going to help fund the exit. So you need a life insurance policy on each owner for as many owners as there are. So if there's 5 owners, this is where it gets kind of tricky because you need to have essentially 5 different life insurance policies for each individual in order to make this make sense. And it becomes a lot of headache from the amount of policies you want to do. So I'd say when you're looking at cross purchase agreements, I would say around 3 owners or less is about the world that you want to focus on this strategy. As you get to more and more ownership, you might want to look at potentially doing the entity purchase agreement. And this is how the entity purchase works. So same scenario, we've got 2 owners, owner A and owner B. Owner B is going to be leaving the business. Instead of them buying insurance policies on each other to then fund the buyouts when they depart the business, what they're going to do is they're going to still buy life insurance on each other, but that's going to be bought by the business. So the business itself is going to own it, and they're going to be the sole beneficiary of that life insurance policy when they pass. So what happens is when owner B decides that he's going to leave the business, the life insurance policy is going to fund the buyout of owner B and help keep those remaining life insurance benefits go back to the business, which owner A will then, of course, inherit as a result of him being the sole owner of the business. The one thing to keep in mind when it comes to an entity purchase agreement is you're going to have a potential impact depending on their current estate tax, I'll say standing, because of a recent ruling that was made back in 2024, I believe, which is called the Connolly Agreement, or I should say the Connolly Decision. So with the Connolly Decision, I have a quick little slide on it. It's about 2 brothers who entered into an entity redemption buy-sell agreement. So they both bought life insurance via the business inherits it. And what the IRS ruled, or I should say the courts ruled in this particular scenario, was that the inheritance of the life insurance going into the corporation or into the business throttled the value up. So at current day, right, we look at bullet point number 1. These 2 individuals had a business that was valued at 3.86 million. They had in bullet point number 2 a life insurance policy that was worth 3.5 million that would go into the company to fund the buyout for Michael Connolly Sr. What happened is when the business basically received the funds of the 3.5 million, and technically it was actually about 3 million, that was in their buy-sell agreement that was received by the business. What happened was their business was no longer valued at 3.86 million. The receiving of the life insurance benefit into the company throttled their benefit up $3 million to a $6.86 million state tax liability. As a result, it essentially increased Michael Connolly's value in his stake in the business from $3 million to $5.3 million. As a result of this, he had now owed a federal estate tax liability of 890,000. So it can have a pretty big impact when you're doing an entity redemption. There are a couple different ways that you can structure it to be more efficient so we don't run into this. So, for example, the insurance can be owned by an outside LLC, or we can wrap it into a potential trust on the outside. I don't want to get into that on this particular call because we're trying to keep it a little high level. But going back to, at the end of this, how do we figure out and navigate some of these opportunities? I think the biggest thing to note is if you were going to focus on an entity redemption, which means the business is going to be the sole inheritor of that life insurance policy, one thing we do want to check is the structuring of how we're going to hold these and look at alternative aspects so that way we don't run into the same issues that the Connolly family did and have an estate tax issue of 890,000 that we were unaware of or unexposed to. So something to keep in mind. It doesn't come up often. It's not prevalent, but it can happen, and that's why I just want to bring it up before we move on to something that's a little bit more focused on the key person side.
Yeah,
So
that was
that's
that was great. Oh, sorry, Nick, I didn't mean to cut you off.
going.
I was going to say that was great, and we do have a couple of really good questions here too. So Journey asks, what will happen if one of the owner passed away? Well, essentially, what we're explaining here is that is the point of the life insurance. When one of the owners passes away, we now have funds to buy out the other partner or partners, right? And it just so this whole cross purchase and entity purchase thing, it just depends on what the business needs, and that's what we're going to probably go through here in just a second.
Exactly.
And here's a good one for you, Nick. Next one from Courtney's is there a cost basis issue and, individual versus entity owned as well?
I guess I'm not sure what we mean by the cost basis issue, right? So I guess the cross purchase, right? They're both funding it out of their own pockets essentially to go buy it on each other. Now, the entity redemption, right? The business is technically funding those. So the business is the one that has the cost basis. I'm not sure what issues we might be finding as a result of that, but that is where the cost basis differs between those two, if that makes sense, because it all depends on who's truly funding it.
Right. So Courtney,
Okay.
I think what we're trying to get at there too, and correct me if I'm wrong, is this is the business is owning this life insurance policy. So the basis is coming from the business.
Mhm.
Um, and within life insurance, when it's a death benefit proceed, that's not something that we really need to factor in.
Correct. Exactly. And if you were to, for some reason, want to tap these for a different reason, like for example, for cash, that's where we kind of look at, and it's almost a perfect segue to this slide, right? Is
Right.
things change, right? So when it comes to a buy sell agreement, whether it's an entity redemption, whether it's a cross purchase, things can change. We can reposition policies to get them in or out of an agreement depending on what it's for. And so when you're deciding between, hey, do I need to focus on term insurance or permanent insurance, and what's my best method here? Unfortunately, the answer is it does depend, right? It depends on the structure. Whether you're doing the cross purchase or the entity redemption, it depends on what they're looking for long term or short term. And the big thing going back to your basis question, if they were going to use it maybe for some type of cash later on, obviously, if we want to reposition it outside of the buy sell agreements and utilize it maybe more for something from a business proceeds related, we can do that with the permanent insurance because you'll have some cash growth in there where you wouldn't have that with the permanent. But again, you would need to make sure that you're structuring it the right way and removing it from the agreement so the business now has access to some of that depending on the structure. Adam, look like you were about to say something, so I don't want to interrupt you.
Oh
make
no,
sure.
I'm nodding along because I'm like,
Oh,
yes,
okay, got
yes.
it, got it. All good. So,
You know, and it's a little side note too. Sorry, Nick, I keep cutting you off, man. Sorry. We have a lot of agency and financial practice owners here, right? So like, of course, think about clients, but think about yourself too. What if something were to happen to you? How does that look for the rest for your family? And if you're an LLC, if you're an S corp or anything of the like, something you really want to sit down and talk about.
yep. And going back to the choice between term and perm, it definitely depends. It's something that we probably want to have a conversation about. If you're planning on exiting the business within 5 to 7 to 10 years, we're probably looking more on that short term side and maybe terms most efficient. But if you're just starting this business with your business partner, do you really want to be funding term for 30 years and receiving nothing for it if it expires during that time frame? Or is it better for you to go ahead and front load those costs so you can pay them off now and not have to worry about it later? That's where the permanent comes in. And same thing on the business side. If it's an entity redemption and we're going back to valuations, well, those policies can be looked at as a liability or as an asset. If you're doing term, that's more of a liability. They got to pay that every single year. If it's permanent, yeah, they still have to pay it. Don't get me wrong, it's premium coming out of the business. However, on the balance sheet side of things, the cash value can be included in some portion of that valuation, which can help for maybe a future sale of that business, right? So just things to consider when it comes to exit strategies. And I'm gonna kind of skip over this slide. I think I just got a little ahead of myself on the cash val or the cash value side of things, but this kind of runs through all of that same info that I was talking about, from flexibility, from liquidity. So the next piece that we'll really kind of dive through, and I know it says here buy sell agreements, but we just talked about that's actually key person we're going to run through. So protecting your clients or really your business owner's most valuable asset. How are we going to do that? And who are we looking for in this particular scenario, right? We're looking for corporate officers, experienced managers, folks that are valuable to the business. You know, maybe it's your tech guy in the background that he knows everything and you don't really know how it works, but he's the guy that keeps the show running. Whoever that is for your business owner, that's who we're looking for here. And how do we get them to tell us who that is? Well, here's a couple questions you can kind of throw at them, right? Is your business successful and growth dependent on the talent of just a few? If so, that means you're heavily weighted on just those few individuals. And if they were to leave, it's going to have a big impact to your business. So I'm not going to run through each of these questions, but something that you guys can review on your own and take with you when it comes to your next meeting with a business owner and ask them what their plan is for this. Because if they're not having a plan and they're heavily weighted with 2 or 3 key people, that means they're building their business on top of something that could pull the rug out right from under them, and that's where it all comes crashing down. And when you get these key people, you know, you go back to maybe a top salesperson, for example. How do you really adequately explain, you know, what is that value to the business if they were to leave, right? So depending on their role, depending on their structure, is really how you can determine what valuation to put on this individual's life from a key person perspective. And if they're more on the operations side, you know, maybe it's a multiple of their salary. But if they're in sales, maybe it's a percent of profits because they're driving the revenue coming in. So there's multiple different ways you can do it. There's not necessarily a right or a wrong method, but it does heavily weigh on what their role is and what makes sense from that particular standpoint. So one thing to keep in mind when it comes to Lincoln is we can typically get for folks, if we're doing the multiples, it's going to be about 10 times income or 10 times their salary for the most part. And if you have a unique circumstance, maybe it's a venture capital company or maybe their company is a little bit structured, we can potentially even get up to 20 times their income, just depending on what their current situation is. So that's about what you're going to expect in the marketplace. Going back to my point of Lincoln's focus in this world, you know, compared to the industry, we can get up quite high for the right case and the right scenario and the right business. So something to keep in mind if you have that top executive that you're looking to make sure your business is protected from if they were to leave. And so here is how the key person strategy works, right? You've got essentially a written notice between the company and the key person saying, hey, I'm going to have insurance on my behalf, right? The insured or the key person has to, of course, consent to that. And as a result, the company then funds life insurance on that key person, and the business owns it. They have rights to all of the policy. And if something were to happen, they can go ahead and receive the benefits of that policy, whether that's surrendering the policy for the cash value, or if it's passing away, it's receiving those death benefit proceeds. And going back to the similar question that we had kind of tackled with our entity redemption and our cross purchase agreements is, how do I know what to choose, right? How do I know that I need to focus on term business versus permanent business? Similar conversation around the structure. Well, it more centers around from, if you're talking about, what's most beneficial, going back to this key person aspect, if they leave the business, but they don't necessarily pass away, how is the company going to get compensated for that, right? And on term, they wouldn't necessarily. There's not much to get compensated for if your 40-year-old top executive leaves at 45. If you bought a term policy, they're out the door, you spent the premiums on that. However, if you had a cash value focused policy that was built for death benefit but also had cash growth, when they leave, you can either keep that policy on the books or you can say, hey, they're gone now. Let me surrender the policy for the cash, and I can use that to help offset maybe the acquisition cost of a new employee, or, you know, have some cash influx into the business while you're training a new individual for that role. So that's where key person, I think, has a little bit more lenience, or I say motivation, to the cash value focus side. But again, they just have to be aware that, of course, there's a little bit more costs associated with that.
I got a good one, Nick.
Yes, sir.
Are key person policies portable? So say the key person's insured and does their tenure, now wants to leave. Is it possible to transfer that ownership back to the individual?
I actually don't know the answer to that, but I believe the answer is no.
Uh, I would agree,
Oh,
and in most cases, but where it may be possible is it does also create a taxable event, because now you've taken the business who's had a deduction on it and transferred it to the individual who is receiving it as a gift. So remember, if possible, that is going to trigger a tax event.
more you know. So I didn't know
Hey,
that.
hey, got to keep the people on the edge of their seats here, you know?
Yes, sir, you do. Yes, sir, you do. Well, I won't run into the product side of this as much, but I will just kind of do a quick plug from whether it's term, whether it's permanent, whether you're focused on long-term or short-term focused. We do have a lot of opportunities in this business owner place, which I'm sure Adam can kind of share with you guys a little bit more as opportunities come up. A couple things to kind of keep in mind when it comes to key person. I would say the underwriting side of it, we just want to make sure we have a clear and concise reason breakdown of their compensation. A lot of the times people will come in and say, hey, my top executive makes 50K salary and we want to get, 10 million on them, or 5 million or 7. We can get, going back to the multiples, pretty high, but it has to be justifiable within that 10 to 20 times multiple range. So if they're getting compensated in some other aspect or some other form, let's make sure that we include that. So having a cover letter outlining this is, would say, one of your most important aspects, because it can lead to underwriting troubles down the line if we don't. So then the last, I would say, probably the most in-depth one we'll talk about today is going to be executive benefits, right? And this really comes to, for your business owners, how do they do three things? How do they retain? How do they reward? How do they recruit? And in this day and age, hiring is a very difficult, it's a long process. It takes a lot of time to invest. How do you make sure those people stay on board, stay with you, and are invested in the growth of your company and the future of your company? By utilizing an executive benefit strategy, that is one way we can do it. So, going back again, here's some questions that you can ask, right, to start the conversation. And the top one's probably the most efficient ones. Are you concerned about losing your key employees to competitors or early retirement? Those that are often the most successful are also the ones that often probably will retire early because they are successful. how do you keep them in the game? How do you keep their head in the game and keep them wanting to stay, earning you more revenue and bringing in those profits? So that's one way to do that. And there's multiple different levels, or I should say spectrums, to executive benefits. And it just depends on really control. All of it comes down to control and who the company wants it to be in favor of and who maybe the employee wants it to be in favor of. It's an agreement between the two that they do kind of have to meet in the middle on. And so oftentimes we do end up in the middle, but it is a spectrum of focus. So from a control perspective, who has the say? You've got the control with the employee, which is our executive bonus, section 162. And what this structure really is the corporation is bonusing premium dollars, essentially. We'll call it bonusing, or just say we'll give the bonus to an employee, and they're using that bonus to then fund a life insurance policy. And there's two ways that we can structure it, which we'll dive into a little bit. The other structure that we've got here is what we call split dollar. So the corporation or the business is paying for that life insurance policy via a loan to the employee, and they're paying interest typically on that loan. We're getting at least taxed on the interest on that loan. Again, we'll give a little bit more details into that. They have rights to some of the cash value of the policy, not all of the cash value. Oftentimes you see a lot of folks meet in the middle here because the corporation has vested interest and vested control, but the employee has some vested interest and vested control. And so together they split some of those benefits of the insurance, right? And some of those costs, AKA split dollar. We're not super creative in the insurance industry. So that's it's pretty baseline stuff, unfortunately. We'll get creative with it one day. And then the last but not least piece of opportunity is what we call 409A, deferred compensation plan. What we're really looking at here is what we call SERP, which is a supplemental executive retirement plan. Again, not super sexy sounding. What that means is we are giving essentially a promised benefit to an employee. So the company says, hey, we're going to pay you $100,000 a year, or we're going to pay you 10% of your salary growing at X rate, whatever the agreement is. We are using the insurance as a funding method to provide that benefit. And the reason we do that is because it's tax favorable to the company, because taxation can change, right? If you promise them an XYZ benefit, by doing this, we can get some benefit on the corporation side from a taxation perspective with those premium dollars and deferring that tax. So it's just allowing us to leverage the tax advantages of life insurance. See if we can get this going over. There we go. So a couple kind of key things, right? When it comes to, let's just say, the ownership side, and I'll actually go through, I'm not going to go through this as much, but I'll go through the decision tree. So when you have a client and their main focus is, hey, I need to help retain or recruit or reward whoever it is, the thing that you want to consider, and the biggest piece, is knowing what kind of business structure they have, because knowing the type of business structure they have really gives you the opportunity of what you'll have available to you. So, for example, if it's a pass-through entity, right, and it's the owner, they can't go ahead and retain, recruit, and reward themselves per se, right? They're already vested in all the interests of the business. But what they can do is fund a life insurance policy focused on retirement income outside of the business personally, and still take advantage of those same tax advantages that life insurance offers, but it's not going to be underneath the wrapper of the guise of the business. Now, as we look in the middle here, right, let's say we've got a C Corp group, and whether you're an employee or an owner or an employee, essentially we have to look at which considerations are most important. Are we going to give an executive bonus? Are we going to give a SERP, split dollar? And it all goes back to that control piece. So this is a great one that I have a lot of folks use and save when they sort of talk to their clients and figure out what is most important to them and what are they trying to do. They can then understand from a control perspective which one might fit their business owner's book the best.
Maybe if you could take a quick second on executive comp, what we were just talking about, give us a sense on what kind of businesses we're looking for, or maybe what size of business this, because I noticed when we talk about pass through, for everyone that's not familiar, that's usually an LLC, an S corp, a sole proprietor. A C corp is a corporation where essentially it has stock. But what are we looking for then there, Nick?
Yeah, I would say when you're talking about executive compensation agreements, more often than not, you're looking for a larger size business. So typically what I'm seeing is about 20 plus employees or more is kind of the world that you're looking at from a structuring side, because as you get to those smaller businesses, there's different ways that you can reward and keep. So that would be kind of who you're looking for. And then the big piece of it, again, it just goes back to the control and the structure on that standpoint.
So, for all my PNC guys out there, think of your commercial plumbing guys. They've got 20, installers, and they've got, 10 technicians or what have you. That's probably a good fit somewhere in that area. So keep that in mind.
Correct. And good example is my brother's in IT, right? He's an IT consultant. There's about 20-ish of them. And they drive around, they work for other small businesses, fixing their lovely IT problems like we were talking about before, Adam. And how does he stop that guy, my brother, going from another smaller group? He can go ahead and implement an executive bonus arrangement, right? Or he can offer a SERP or something of that nature to keep him vested in the company. And you can kind of put what they call the golden handcuffs on it, which I can talk about in just a sec. The golden handcuffs allows you to put a vesting schedule so that way if they leave before that vesting schedule is up, they don't have the rights to the full policy, right? Or they don't have the rights to all of it or some of it. It just depends on the agreement. So it's a way to keep your top folks staying with your own business. And we'll kind of dive into it. I've got a better decision tree here for the executive bonus arrangement. So going back to, how does it work or how's the structure? The executive bonus is an agreement between the employer and the employee, right? The premium, which is deductible for the business, that'd be the advantage for your business in this particular case. They give a bonus to the employee who's received the bottom hand side. The employee, just like any of us who've ever received the bonus, they owe taxes on that bonus. There's kind of two ways that companies can structure it. They call it a single bonus or a double bonus. A single bonus means they pay it. The employee then owns or owes the tax to the IRS on that difference, right, of what they normally would pay on a bonus. We take what's left over and they fund it into the life insurance policy. There's also a double bonus, which essentially the employer can gross up the dollars they're going to pay. So that why the bonus tax is covered essentially, and then it goes into the insurance that way. So two ways to fund it. With there, you can also put the golden handcuffs, and you can stipulate pay over 5 years or 7 years or 10 years. You get a 10% access to the cash value of the policy until you reach 100%, or you get an access to X, Y, and Z. So there's different ways you can put that agreement, again, to keep them with that particular company. And that's employee has the most control, right? So once they're bonus to that, the policy in itself is owned by the employee and they have the right to do whatever they want with it, whether that's surrender it, whether that's keep it going. They can fund it with additional dollars themselves if they want to. So it's full ownership, all on the employee. The company is simply just funding that via a bonus. So loan regime, right, is going to be similar, but a little different. And so here's how it works. The premium is not bonused to the employer or to the employee, excuse me. It is considered a loan to the insured. So by it being considered a loan and not compensation, they don't have to pay a bonus or income tax on it. And what they do is the insured simply just pays loan interest on the loan to the business, right? So that why the business is loaning them the premium to pay for the policy. That loan is essentially received as some type of compensation. As a result, they would have to pay tax on it. Oftentimes, what a company will do to really reduce the employee's obligation is they'll bonus an amount equal to the loan interest that they would owe on an annual basis to them. So that way they don't have to come out of their pocket and pay that tax on the loan interest. but that tax on the loan interest that they are receiving is considered some type of compensation. And then as a result, what they do, depending on the structure, is you can build in different types of cost recoveries and things of that nature. And what it is the business will now have a right to the cash value in the policy up until the loan amount. And then thereafter, that piece. So if they put in, let's say, $100,000 of premium, the business owns and has the right to the first $100,000 of premium and a specified death benefit in the policy. Thereafter, whatever is the difference, the employee has the right to the difference. So if there's $200,000 of cash in the policy, business has the first 100, employee has the second 100. And based off of the loan regime split dollar agreement, they also have the rights to access to the death benefit upon their passing as well. So to kind of paint this in probably an easier to digest piece, we'll move on to the next slide. But thing to remember is loan regime is premium is loan, interest is seen as compensation on the loan received by the employee, and the exit can be as a result of the cash values in the policy, depending on the structure. So here's how it works. So employer on the left side pays the premium via the loan. The employer is assigned as a collateral assignment to the balance of the loan, right? So if they gave $100,000 of premium, they have first rights of access to $100,000 of the policy. Now, the key employee has to pay on the right-hand side compensation for the bonus for the loan interest. So that's where that typically works. And now the employee has cash value growth access to anything above the premiums paid. And if they were to pass away, they get to receive that for their family or their next generation. So it really gives control to both sides of the organization, where the business gets their money back. The business has first right to some of the cash to really get equal. They get to retain their employee, and now the employee gets a benefit of all the cash growth above and beyond what was paid in. They typically don't have to come out of pocket for really much unless they don't want to bonus them for the interest. And they get to be the recipient of all the death benefit proceeds, depending on the structure of the agreement. And there's multiple different ways to structure a loan regime split dollar agreement. But this is kind of the most baseline way. So, Adam, I know I threw a lot out there before we run into the last one. Anything you want to add to that?
No, that was great, but let's make sure everybody's awake. If you're paying attention and you're liking this, do me a quick favor, drop something in the comments. Let Nick and I know how we're doing here. Give me a thumbs up, give me an emoji. Let me just know you're there.
While we're doing that, I'll bop on to the very last piece, and we'll get it rolling. So, SERP, Supplemental Executive Retirement Plan. This one is probably, I would say, the easiest one of the bunch. I'm gonna bop through. Let's see. So it's really an informal funding. A SERP is just a promised benefit. The easiest way I've explained it is kind of like a pension. A pension, you need to pay that person whatever that promised benefit was. If it's 50 grand a year, 100 grand a year. Hopefully it's more money than that for the employer's sake or the employee's sake. But as a result, for the business, that's a liability on their books. So what's the most efficient way to fund that liability of paying out 50,000 or 100,000 or a million a year? They can utilize typically life insurance to do that. And it kind of looks like this. So what the SERP will do is same way that we talked about key person. There has to be notice and consent from the executive to the business, because the business is going to own and pay for this. So they have to acknowledge that they're being have insurance on them. The business pays into the life insurance policy, and this is not deductible to them like you would typically see. But the reason that they're doing this is they've got the tax advantages of the life insurance. You don't have to take into account the typical income tax that you would, or typical aspects like that, when it comes to the actual payout for the insured. So if they promise them a certain benefit, there's no need to gross it up for taxes or anything like that. They can pay out a much, frankly, lower amount via the insurance. And this is really, you're looking at the standard cash accumulation focused LERP style play The business owns it. They use the cash accumulation from the policy to take out loans and withdrawals. They take those loans and withdrawals and get them over to the executive. That's essentially how a SERP is structured. So it's in comparison to loan regime split dollar, it is very simplistic. It is all owned and funded by the business for the benefit of the key employee, and really they have full and total control. Oftentimes, life insurance is just one aspect of the funding of the SERP, and they're typically invested in other assets as well that together kick out the income that's promised, or I should say the benefit that's promised in retirement to that executive. So SERP is probably a little bit less common. Going back to, I'll say, the executive benefit spectrum, loan regime split dollar to me is the one that I see often, as well as executive bonus. I think those are much more often seen than in this SERP scenario. And the reason is executive bonus is a lot easier from a paperwork standpoint, from a funding standpoint. And the loan regime split dollar really kind of meets them in the middle of employee has control, but employer also has control. So all that being said, that's kind of it from the presentation formalized standpoints, but to just kind of rehash for everybody, the business owner marketplace is a huge space. You can focus on executive benefits via executive bonus or loan regime split dollar or the SERP world. There's key person. How do we make sure that the business is protected if their highest earners or those that bring in the most revenue or that are most important, integral to the business pass away? And then from a business owner perspective, how do you make sure that they're in a right place for if someone were to pass, if someone gets disabled, they decide to exit the business and move to a different industry? How do they fund the buyout so they're not now partnering with, their business partner spouse that they never liked to begin with? How do you avoid that? By having a proper buy-sell plan in place can help prevent that from you. So things to note to get from, I guess, your business owner clients from a life insurance illustration opportunity perspective. What type of business do they have? What are they looking to do? Whether it's an exit strategy, protect the key person or retain or recruit. And then from there, what the budget looks like from a business perspective, right? What are they looking to provide benefit wise? So I would say it is a conversation that you want to get many details on who we're after, why we're after it, and what the budget is that we're after. And the last thing that I think people always forget, I don't care if you're doing business sales or not, they do have to be healthy. So we do need to get some frame of ability to apply for insurance. It doesn't have to be, very much these days. You can really get insurance on a lot of folks, but something you want to take into account. So Adam, from your perspective, I mean, when you're working these business owner clients, what would you say is most important for you to get from an illustration perspective so you can run some opportunities?
Well, for number one, smoker, non-smoker. I can't
That's
tell you how many times a illustration has taken a not so good turn is when we found out they use tobacco. I think secondly, there too, height and weight is a very good indication of what rate class. I typically a fan of illustrating at standard in most cases, but if we're finding out that they're either really heavy, maybe that's not a standard, or that maybe they're doing really great, and you feel a little more comfortable quoting preferred. Um, and I don't expect everyone here to be an underwriter, right? But you want to know some basics. And so asking if there's any major health conditions, have you had any surgeries, are there anything like that applies to you in the past 10 or so years? That'll usually weed out about 95% of the things that may happen. So, again, you don't need to be a professional underwriter, but you do need to know a good couple of questions there.
Yeah. And one thing a lot of time, I mean, going more to the business side, less of the underwriting side, if you're going into one of these meetings and you're maybe not sure what information to get, but you kind of know what they're looking to do, feel free to give myself or Adam a call. I mean, we're more than happy to give you guys some context of, okay, hey, this is a business owner with only one other business partner, and we're talking about how do we provide an exit strategy. That conversation of what you need to get from a budget perspective is much different than, hey, I'm working with a guy that has a 30-person business. We're trying to make sure we retain this top 3 employees on the sales side. It's just a different conversation of budgets and who's paying for what and what's the most efficient structuring. So it's a big opportunity. It's a big pond that we're playing in. And you don't have to know it all, but you just need to understand the questions to ask so you can come back to Adam and myself and we can steer you guys in the right direction. Well, this probably makes more sense to look into, and here's why. So the questions on each of these topics are inside the presentation. I'll shoot it to Adam. He'll shoot it out to everybody so you guys have access to it. But again, if you guys want to do a deep dive on each of these, because this was sort of glossing the surface, I'm more than happy to do a one-on-one call. I'm sure Adam is as well, and we can really teach you guys or show some examples of how we've implemented these in the past.
Perfect. Thanks, Nick. And we're actually hang in there. We're going to give away some merch in a second, but let me drop a little nugget here too. As I've had numerous advisors, agents, even myself, a best way nowadays to get in the door with the business is one of my favorite sales questions is, did you know? Did you know? Have you heard about the Connolly decision and how that impacts business owners? And then you want to give them just a quick little blurb. Hey, so the Supreme Court recently changed the way IRS views proceeds from life insurance in a buy-sell agreement. When was the last time you had your buy-sell agreement reviewed? Right. And sometimes those couple of sentences, whether or not it heads to actually looking at their buy-sell agreement, at least will get you in the door and get you on the right track. So certainly stay tuned for more gold. All right. Well, Nick, let's give away a couple of really nice Lincoln polos here and make sure everyone was paying attention. So here are the
I love
rules. I'm gonna ask a question, and first person to post it in the chat will be the winner. If you are the winner, please email me, adam@back9ins.com, your size and where to send it. And you can only win once. Let's give everybody a shot here. All right. So if everybody's ready, let's do this. So, first question: what are the three types of commercial life insurance that we talked about today? We'll give it a second here, see if anyone's paying attention. Ooh, really close, Courtney, really close. Anybody else want to take a shot at that one? A couple of people typing. I see it. Ooh, okay. So by technicality, Angel, you got it there. Buy, sell, key employee. But what we're also looking for there is executive bonus. Right? So buy, sell, executive bonus, and key employee. So we'll give it to Angela there. All right. So next question. And I just kind of went over this too, so this will really see if you're paying attention or not. What is the Connolly decision? And you could just give us a quick sentence on that. What do you think it is? Got some answers coming in here.
Maybe this will help. Real quick, oops. Let's take a look at this.
I feel like I need the little Jeopardy theme in the background here.
Be a singer?
No.
I'm
I'll clear this room faster than you know.
Yeah.
I think we're getting some good answers here. Not quite, Stacy, but close. So the Connolly decision, if we remember, it's a decision the Supreme Court made to do what? All right, just out of interest of time. So again, the Connolly decision, guys, changed the way entity entity purchase agreements worked versus cross-sell agreements. Entity purchase, again, what the Connolly decision did was basically meant that the life insurance proceeds will be included in the gross estate of the decedent partner, and then as well as the other partner. But good try. All right, last one here, and we went over this one just a few minutes ago. Loan regime split dollar is known as what? It's a 3 letters. Talked about this. It is a pi. There we go. All right, Journey. And if you want some bonus points there, what does pi? What does each one of those letters stand for? Anybody want to take a stab at that? Yep. All right. So it's premium, interest, and what? Nick, what was it? Ooh, there you go. Journey did get it. Premium, interest, and exit. Excellent job, everyone. All right, perfect. Well, we will be sending out some shirts to you guys. And number one, thank you everyone for joining. We really appreciate having you here and spending some time with us. Nick, again, thank you so much for your time and sponsoring this and going through that. If everyone wouldn't mind, drop something in the comments real quick. Thanks to Nick. Spread the word. We're going to be doing a lot of these Coach Adam sessions. And Nick, we'd love to have you back.
Love to be back. So we'll make it the thing.
Awesome. Excellent. Well, cool. I'll leave this open just for another minute. If anyone has any other questions, please go ahead and drop those in the comments, and we'll stick around to answer them for you.
Thanks, everybody.
Otherwise, take care. And doesn't look like we're going to get any other questions. So, Mr. Majors, I will dismiss you. Thanks again, Nick.
Later.
Right,
Bye.
take care.